Welcome to the Fogwood Files, where fog lingers among the trees and the forest holds its secrets close. The Canadian Maritimes are a land of silence and shadow, where paths dissolve into mist and voices echo without a source. Here, beneath the canopy of pines, people have witnessed things they cannot explain. Their words remain as fragments of a larger mystery, stories carried through the woods like whispers in the dark. Tonight, we open one of those accounts and step deeper into the ledger of the strange.
Case File 013, Lady in White. Date of encounter, summer 2012. Location, Route 105 outside Fredericton, NB. Report complied, October 2025.
I've never written this down before. Honestly, I don't even like talking about it. The one or two times I tried to bring it up, kind of joking, kind of testing the waters, the look people gave me was enough to shut me up. You know that look, half pity, half amusement, like you've just said something stupid and they're too polite to laugh out loud. That's the last thing I wanted, to be the butt of some ghost story joke in the break room, so I kept quiet. But it's eating at me. So I'm writing it here. Maybe no one will ever read it. Maybe that's for the best, but at least this way it's out of my head and onto paper, and maybe I won't feel so alone with it anymore. Back then I was working overnight shifts at McDonald's on the north side of Fredericton. If you've ever worked overnight in fast food, you know the strange rhythm it creates in your life. Your days become nights, your nights become days. While everyone else is winding down, you're gearing up, pulling on your visor, pouring the first of too many coffees, and bracing for the long stretch until dawn. At first, the hours here were rough, but then I adjusted, and in a weird way, I started to prefer it. The quiet hours between midnight and 6 have a kind of peace that daylight doesn't. The world feels stripped down. Fewer people, fewer distractions, just you and the hum of the fryers, the hiss of the coffee machine, and the handful of night owls who wandered in, like truck drivers, university kids, pulling all-nighters, folks who live by their own clock. I fit in more with them than I ever did with the daytime crowd. After a while, I realized I wasn't tired at night anymore. I was alive in the dark. When my shift ended, I didn't want to just crash into bed. I wanted to move, to stretch out of that greasy fluorescent cocoon and into the world. That's where the night drive started. When I finally got my license and bought a beat-up little car, nothing special, just something that ran, I started driving on nights off. At first alone, then with a friend, Andrew. He was the kind of person who never minded weird hours and could sit in silence for miles, which made him perfect company for those long, aimless drives. Our route of choice was Highway 105. If you've ever driven it at night, you know the feeling. The St. John River unspooling like a ribbon of dark glass beside you, trees pressing in tight on either side, and the road itself stretching out like an endless ribbon into nowhere. In daylight, it's pretty, but at night, it feels like you've slipped out of the world and into someplace older and stranger. We drove it for the peace, for the talk, for the sense of freedom that comes when you're the only car for miles. But that same quiet, the isolation, the stillness, also made what happened that night possible. Without it, maybe I could have convinced myself it was just a trick of the light. But there was no one else on that road. No lights, no traffic. Just us. And her. Now, before I tell you exactly what we saw, I need to explain why it stuck with me the way it did. It wasn't just the shock of seeing something unnatural. It was the way the pieces fit into stories I'd grown up brushing off, half-heard warnings and bits of folklore I never thought twice about until suddenly I couldn't ignore them anymore. Most cultures have their ghosts, but the one that shows up almost everywhere is the lady in white. Now, sometimes she's a bride, and sometimes she's a mother. Sometimes she's just a nameless woman who died far from home. But she always wears pale clothes, her hair often dark and long, and she's always tied to grief, betrayal, or tragedy. I'd read versions of her in old books and online forums during long nights at work, scrolling on my phone between customers. There's La Llorona in Mexico, the weeping woman who wanders riverside mourning her children. There's the White Lady of Scotland, tied to castles and betrayal. Even in New England, drivers talk about women in pale gowns who try to hitch rides, vanishing once the car passes a certain point. In New Brunswick, she shows up too. You hear about her from locals if you listen close enough, though it's not always the same story. Some say she's a young bride killed on the way to her wedding when the carriage overturned on a royal road. Others swear she was a patient who wandered away from the old Nashwauk Hospital and drowned in the river, her soul never finding its way back. And then there are whispers of women murdered in secret, hidden away in the woods, their restless spirits bleeding back into the world. What unites all of those stories isn't just the image of the pale gown and the hidden face. It's the roads. She doesn't haunt houses, not usually. She doesn't linger in graveyards. She waits on lonely stretches of road, often by rivers, forests, or bends, where accidents are common. And if you see her, really see her, you're not just a passerby anymore. You're a participant. She notices you, and she tries to come closer. Some drivers say she walks straight into the path of the car, forcing them to swerve or crash. Others say she tries to climb inside if you stop, and a few, always told in whispers, claim that if you look into her face, if you push past that veil of hair, it will be the last thing you ever do. I always thought these were just stories, fun to read on a slow night for some good scares, but nothing more. Ghosts were campfire smoke, folklore wrapped in mystery. But then Andrew and I saw her, and she fit every detail. It was late in the summer, the kind of night where the air feels thick with damp and the mist rises off the St. John River like breath from a sleeping giant. Andrew and I had driven as far as Keswick, then turned back towards Fredericton along Route 105. It was past 2 a.m., and we hadn't seen another car for half an hour. The only light came from the headlights and the pale glow of the moon on the river. The road ahead curled gently along the bank, and I was just starting to zone out, lulled by the steady hum of the tires, when I saw her. At first she looked like a woman just standing on the gravel shoulder about 100 feet ahead. She was facing the trees, head bowed with long hair spilling forward like a curtain. She wore something pale, white or gray, loose and thin, almost like a hospital gown. It stirred slightly at the bottom as if caught in a breeze, though the night air was still. I eased off the gas, my brain scrambling for an explanation. Who would be standing out there all alone at this hour? That's when I realized what I was seeing. Legs. The gown seemed to drift downward, but below the knees, there was nothing. No feet planted on the gravel, no shadow touching the ground. Just empty air and then the pale hem dissolving into the mist. She wasn't standing at all, she was floating. Andrew leaned forward in his seat, squinting. What the hell? His voice cracked slightly, uncertain. You see that, right? I didn't answer. I couldn't. My grip on the wheel tightened and I let the car roll closer, part of me too shocked to hit the gas. When we were maybe 30 feet away from the woman, she stirred. Not her head, not her hair. Those stayed down, veiling her face, but her whole body shifted, turning slowly, drifting until she was angled toward the road, toward us. And then she began to move. Not walking, not stepping, gliding. Her gown trailing slightly, her form unmoored from the earth. She drifted towards the edge of the road, her face still hidden. Andrew slapped his hand on the dash. Go! Now! Don't stop, just go! I slammed the gas pedal. The tires screeched against the gravel before catching the asphalt, and the car lunged forward. As we shot past her, I caught one last glimpse in the side window. Her hair rippling unnaturally, though no wind blew, her head jerking slightly upward as if to follow. In that split second, the temperature inside of the car dropped. It wasn't the night air rushing in. It was deeper. Bone deep. A cold that clawed at the edges of my chest. And then she was beside us, swallowed by the cave of the road and the mist rising from the river. We didn't stop until we hit the city lights again. Neither of us spoke the entire drive back. When we finally parked, Andrew lit a cigarette with shaky hands. Though he'd quit months before, he just sat there in silence for a while, staring at nothing, letting the adrenaline drain. Finally, he said, "That wasn't a person. Don't even try to say it was. No legs, floating. You saw it too." I nodded. There was no point pretending. For days after, I tried to reason it away. Maybe it was the mist, or the way the headlights hit. Maybe we were tired seeing things that weren't there. But every time I replayed it, the details stuck. The gown, the hair, the missing legs, the way she moved. And the cold. Always the cold. I didn't tell anyone at first, but a week later, during a lull in the overnight shift, I let it slip to one of the older women who worked mornings. I expected her to laugh, but she didn't. Instead, she gave me this long, steady look and said, "You saw her. People have been seeing her along that road for years." My grandmother said it started after a patient went missing from the old hospital up by Nashwauk, walked out in the night and never came back home. They say she's drowned in the river, still in her gown. Some say she's wandering ever since, looking for the way back. Her calmness unsettled me more than the encounter itself. She wasn't surprised. She wasn't even joking. It was just fact, passed down like any other bit of local history. After that, I noticed how people in town swapped stories quietly. Drivers who claimed to see a pale figure in the roadside. Fishermen who swore they heard crying near the river. Always at night. Always along that stretch of 105. I still drive at night sometimes, but not on that road. Not anymore. Every time Andrew suggests it, I shake my head. Because I know what I saw out there. And I know she saw us too. And if I'd slowed down even a second longer, I think she would have been in the car with us. So if you've read this far, maybe you believe me. Maybe you don't. I can't control that. I'm not writing this to convince anyone. I'm writing this because I needed it out of me. Because keeping it locked inside my head, turning it over and over like some private sickness, was eating me alive. So here's my warning for whoever stumbles across this. If you find yourself on Route 105 late at night, especially near Douglas or Keswick, keep your eyes on the road and don't slow down for anyone. I don't care if you think you see a woman standing on the shoulder. I don't care if she looks hurt, lost, or desperate. Just drive past. 'Cause it's not a woman, at least not anymore. What we saw that night wasn't flesh and blood. It wasn't someone who needed help. It was something else entirely. Something older than our rules. Something that feeds on being noticed. And once you see her, she sees you. That much I do know. I've thought a lot about what might have happened if I had stopped the car. If I'd rolled down the window or let my curiosity get the better of me, I don't think Andrew and I would have made it back. At best, maybe we'd be found in a ditch, another accident for the papers to chalk up to fatigue or bad luck. At worst, maybe nothing would have been found at all. That stretch of highway has claimed more lives than most people realize. Accidents, drowning, disappearances. Ask around if you dare. People have always had ways of explaining it. Fog, ice, fatigue. But I don't buy it anymore. I think the lady in white is part of it. She's still there waiting, pulling people into her orbit. So take this seriously. If you're driving alone at night, don't tempt fate by wandering those roads. Don't slow down when you see her, and for the love of God, don't look into her face. I've carried this with me in silence long enough. This is the first time I've told it from start to finish, and maybe the last. Believe me or don't, I honestly don't care. But if one night you're driving that 105 and the mist rolls in thick off the St. John River, and your headlights catch a pale figure on the shoulder of the road, long black hair veiling her face, gown shifting though the air is still, remember this. Don't stop. Don't look. And whatever you do, don't let her get close. And that's all I have to say. This is my warning. Take it and stay alive. End of report.
This report submitted by the Fogwood Files. Another account pulled from the fog and preserved in the records. If you'd like the next story to find its way to you, be sure to like and subscribe so you'll be here when the next fire is lit. Until then, stay close to the firelight, because in the woods, you're never truly alone, and something is always waiting just beyond the glow.